The best way to handle a controlling person is to make them a frustrated person. So, how's that done? Well, you simply say no. That person is no longer controlling. They're frustrated. It sounds easy. And in this case, we're not talking about someone who is controlling by using force. We're referring to someone who tries to use emotions, guilt, shame, etc., to manipulate others to get what they want. Let's talk about why these individuals exist in our lives. People who are selfish and controlling can only be that way if they are in relationship with someone who is adaptive. If someone stands up to them and is honest about his or her wants and desires, then the controlling person has to learn to share, or gets angry and goes away. You are a person, and you cannot go throughout life without pursuing your own wishes, needs, and desires, nor should you. Your needs and desires are going to come out. The person with whom you are in a relationship is not where those needs and desires need to be met. So, identify your needs and desires. Find out why you need this person to fulfill them. You don't, and build your support system outside of that person's control. Then, use your boundaries to take a proactive approach to preserve love rather than using boundaries as a defense mechanism to withdraw. I look forward to walking you through that in this section of the path. Regards.
Hey guys, so here's a question I get a lot. How do you deal with controlling people? Reminds me, I was doing a seminar one night and a lady actually asked that question. And she said, how do you deal with controlling people? And I said, well, you convert them. And she goes, I mean, she thought something like faith or something. I said, you convert them. She goes, how am I going to convert them? I said, you convert them from being controlling people into being frustrated. She goes, what? I said, all you have to do is say no, and they're no longer a controlling person. They're just frustrated. So here's the point I'm trying to get across. In a sense, there's no such thing as a controlling person in a way, because a controlling person, or as we describe that way, are people that exhibit attempts to try to control you, right? But those are just attempts. And the only way they can become actually controlling is if we give them control. Now, I understand there's some situations where, you know, they might be using force and things like that, but I'm talking about where it's more relational control and psychological control. That's power that is actually handed over. And then we say, well, they're so controlling because I had to, or had to do this, or they made me, or whatever. And you'll hear this kind of passive language in there, like made me, had to, didn't have a choice, etc. And you start to drill down, and there are some situations, I understand, where you don't have good choices, but most of the time, is you do have choices. You just don't exercise them. Now, that gets to a problem. When you're dealing with somebody who tries to control you, there's usually got to be something that you need in order for them. So, for example, if they're trying to get you to do something with your time or your energy or your money or other resources or your body or your head or whatever it is, and they're trying to extract you, control you, manipulate you, control your life, make you do this and that, then those attempts are going to come. They come from guilt, fear, anger, or other kinds of relational manipulation, like withdrawing love, or criticizing, or gaslighting, whatever it is. For us to get into it, we have to have some sort of plan. Otherwise, we go, so look at this. If you need somebody's approval, they're going to be able to control you by withholding approval or granting approval when you do it. If you need for people to please you, happy, like you, then for the most part, because they control the resources that you need. If you need for them to be in a good mood, to not be angry, not be mad, then that makes you control. If you need choice is only when they give you permission. Because you feel guilty if you say no, then you're not going to get that approval unless you do what they want. So there's a process. And basically, it's us. Because we tend to give away freedom of intellectual labor. We give away freedom because the only ones who cost something. All those kinds of things. Now, let's say first of all, 90% that's a large in good relationships. What you're hearing is not going to happen. If you grew up under controlling people and have a lot of experience with controlling people, then you're wired to assume and expect if you say no, somebody's going to reject you. If you say no, somebody's going to manage you. So, but it's very possible that now you're not in that relationship anymore, you're not in that environment anymore, and if you said no, they go, oh, okay, fine. I see this all the time. I'm starting to like learn that, wow, I have a lot more freedom than I knew I had because I got wired to that. So the first thing I want you to do is to realize a lot of these are set up. You're remembering when it wasn't okay. And you kind of say, where do you want to go to dinner? Or what movie do you want to see? Or whatever. And you go, I don't know, what do you want? Well, really, you might have a thought of something you want to do, but you feel like, no, I don't want to make up. And in fact, one of the things we know is the more passive and adaptive somebody is, fearing abandonment or fearing rejection, the more likely they are to be abandoned and rejected because they don't have any power in a relationship. And relationships have got to be mutual. They have glue over a long period of time in a good way. So I want you to check it out in your head first. Now, secondly, it may be that you're right. They might be a controlling influence. They may be giving you every reason to believe that they are that. The first thing you got to do is you got to get in touch with your fear and your need and your is, and you have to take care of it. Look at it this way. Let's say that you're in a crummy job with a crummy boss, and you don't want to work for that person anymore, but you need the money. I would advise you, look, go get your savings strong first. Go get your resume strong first. Get the skills. In other words, get the power that you actually need. So you don't need that job for a while, or you don't need that job because it's the only one you get because maybe you need to take a course or get another certification or whatever. But the more power that you actually have, the need for that person is controlling you is down. Insane. You see this in the couple relationship. Somebody will be in a neighborhood like nomadic or somebody really hurtful, and they need that relationship because they'll be all alone and they know that they can have it, so they keep giving in to be in control. But then they go join high school or get codependency group or they go find, the therapist will find for a group of friends to support. Now they know if they get rejected, then guess where they go? They've got friends that are not alone. See those huge confidence in your child. When a child, they don't have their parents' love and approval, that's the whole world. That's where all the resources are. It's everything it's their only option. But as an adult, they'll continue to treat people as if they are the entire source of love and approval and connection and help and understanding with members in the person. It's a big world out there. And so you got to get your support system and share it first. Then it's a matter of dealing with those voices in your head and learning to recognize those things. And you learn to say no to them, and you do that in the context of people that are going to help you. But it's just, you got to go check back in with them and say, oh, I got to tell you, don't do that. Oh, call me first. Let's role play. And you your coaches and your buddies to actually strengthen you to go back there and do it. So remember, if you're feeling control, there's generally two places. There's a verse in the Bible that says this: don't give under compulsion or begrudging, but give as you purpose in your heart, because God knows that you forgive. Begrudging or compulsion or compulsion, those are the two things that works. The begrudging giving is when I feel pressure from somebody and they're manipulating me and pressuring me, and I give in and I begrudge. I don't want to give in. I'm saying yes, but I really do no, and I begrudge it because I'm being controlled from the outside. And under compulsion means being controlled from the inside. I feel compelled. The voice in my head says, "Well, you're selfish if you say that. How could you do that?" And so we feel compelled, and we don't want to do it. So dealing with the loss of grief is going to come from realizing the interpersonal pressures that you tend to give into, storing up strength in other places and new skills, or realizing the internal pressures that you give into. Then, back to the first one, I have to give is you this is important. This is what I love to tell people all the time. You know, sometimes like if you got a family member that's helping, well, that's great. But purpose, I would sit down and say, you know, I've got so much time, you know, in the week I can drive by, or I can call, or I can do, you know. But purpose and budget and decide this is how much I can give and how much I can help you out. This is what I can do. That way, each time they call you, you don't feel like you're starting over and have to do whatever they want to do. The resources, time, energy, all of it. Those are finite, really. Like $10, you have $10. So when you budget in this relationship, it's going to get $1 of this relationship, $3. I'm going to get a couple bucks, and then you budget this, which is good. So remember these finite resources: your time, your energy, how much you're going to help, how much you're going to bail somebody out, what you're going to get to, what you're going to support, what you're going to get to, all of that. It's deciding. I got this much time. I got this much money. This much energy. And explaining that. So that's what I'm going to do. And if they can't, so remember triggers. Because if they're going to do it, they're going to be angry. So find the need inside. Find the need. Cure the need through other support, other ways of upping your balance sheet. Learn the voices in your head, learn some of those, and then interact purposefully to give to somebody. Not that we're doing this also. Everybody, if somebody you can, you don't owe the world whatever they want. You don't owe somebody whatever they feel entitled to. Choose to be good, pays generally speaking, giving in to control because you're thinking it's not what you do. All it's doing is enabling that. So if you got time, energy, money to give to somebody, give it to somebody that actually is asking. So you've heard the phrase wake up call? The wake up call is when you get it. Right? Think of your alarm clock. You're snoozing. You don't know what's going on. Then it goes off, and all of a sudden you wake up and you realize, wait a minute, I got a day to go live here. Well, you know what? Relationships are like that too. Sometimes we can actually be asleep at the switch because you're in this pattern and you've gotten into this pattern and you don't know you're oversleeping. So it's time to wake up because there's a day to be lived. Now, think about this for a second. A wake up is somehow that you get startled to coming out of the slumber. And there's one great alarm clock when it comes to talent. You know what that alarm clock is? That's what it is. Now, I want you to think about this because a lot of you have done something that's normal for humans to do. And that is you develop the tolerance for pain because you have gotten used to it and you didn't really have a lot of options. So you learn to kind of ignore it and you get fixes all the time. People have like, you know, a sore tooth, sensitive tooth or whatever, and they don't like the dentist or they're afraid of the dentist or whatever. They chew on the other side. And what happens is it's like life. Now, here's the thing. Your life is not so I want you to look into this area that might be you find yourself in open space. And what I mean by that is just run around and you can make time audits. Just time audits will discover the law of how you spend your time. Ask yourself if your time is physically as you chose it, or are you in just like so check your energy. The energy level is something that is really important because it motivates us to go out and wake up and go out. But if we're depleted, that energy is without others. Secondly, depression. You know, a lot of times depression is an outcome. It's because people are sunk into this powerless kind of learned helplessness place where just not control their minds. That's emotional states of depression. Another reason is anxiety. A lot of times people generalize anxiety because they're always kind of like, oh my God, somebody might have control of your day. Or you go into a relationship and you feel not really, you know, secure and you have a lot of anxiety because you don't feel like you can say no. You don't feel like you can live up to somebody's expectations. So you've got emotional pain like anxiety, depression, fears, stress, burnout, anger. You know, one of my favorite proverbs it says, "An angry person is like a city without walls." Well, think about that. If you always feel in control, you'd be active. How could you, you know? And instead of saying, if we got good boundaries, how much do we do that? Because we're not being controlled, right? And you just say, no. So look at the emotional ups and downs in terms of anger, and then you're more irritable and short and all of that because you might not feel controlled and intrigued. And that's a wake up. So you've got all these emotional symptoms. Another one, a wake up call is self-management. A lot of these people get controlled and burned down and stuff like that, and then they'll run off and look at how choices make just to feel different ways of looking at trying to get out of the deadness or out of the emotional or whatever that is. So you've got emotional symptoms, and another one is a category of relational symptoms that will cause a wake up call. Look at your relationships. Do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel loved? Do you feel satisfied? That may be a wake up call for something going on in a relationship where you feel like you're being controlled, manipulated, not a person, all that good stuff. Do you lose relationship? Because sometimes your loneliness is one of the best boundaries for wake up calls. And you're alone, isolated, basically, fears of intimacy or fears of getting involved because there's too much fear. Especially, it's attachment. Attachment that they can't make a commitment because they fear if they're in a relationship they lose their freedom, they lose their autonomy. Freedom and autonomy only exists within a relationship. The only way you have it is to be alone, and you're really not free. You're playing defense. So, are you able to avoid relationships and situations? That's a way. What about this one? Unrealized feelings, unrealized desires, what is deep in their heart, their passion, because you're being controlled with something. Even if we're countries or family or whatever it is, you kind of give into whatever people expect you out of you, whatever to then say, what is going to happen? I see this a lot of times with families where there's a lot of pressure to be this or be that. Sweet to the soul, but hope before the nice things. Love that rock. It's the same. It's like that. It's marriage. They keep getting on and it makes your heart sing. A lot of times that's a boundary because it's time to get a focus and say, listen, I'm going to give a certain amount of my time and energy and resources to pursuing this. And when everybody else comes in and it has to score everything else, you got to be able to see your purpose. Think of this one. What if you're driving in the freeway and all of a sudden you notice your car and you make one turn out on the exit and you start to, and you realize my steering wheel's not working. You look over the light, it's you, and and the person over there's got control of your phone. That's all. They're getting off on exits and they're ending up in places that's really not your rules. So that's a way. Is there something really that you can talk out of? It's disapproval, whatever it is. So look at these areas of emotional, relational, by doing an audit, some good ways of that. No time audit. I'm serious. I have C goods because they tell me the most important priorities are A, B, and C, and then I say, okay, I want you to do a time audit. Look at time, and they look at so much of the time they spend not on those priorities, but get sucked into this meeting, get sucked into this crisis, get pressured into this, and all the while they're supposed to be emotions out of it, relationship out of it, you're doing something. You've got to look at your chart. So a lot of times, when I come in, look at those things, touch, and you look at those things. So I want to talk about an issue that sometimes I hear about. Somebody will walk up to me and say, my significant other in some relationship, they read boundaries and then they said they didn't ever talk to me about it. And I said, well, obviously they didn't read the book. It's not what it says. But here's the problem. A lot of times people use the concept of boundaries to get out of pain in some way, but in a reactive way, not proactive. Boundaries are not about selfishness, self-centeredness, getting rid of every relationship in your life because you don't like something's doing. Ending significant relationships because of there might have been real problems. Boundaries are in service of the relationship. Boundaries are to make sure that love can thrive and grow, not to end every relationship. Here's what happens. Sometimes people they take it, take it, take it, take it, because they don't have any boundaries. And that's really common. And there's a lot of things. One of the places I hear this most is sometimes with adult children and parents. The adult child, has grown up, they're always under this control, the mesh family manipulation control, and they totally blow off their family and say, I don't have anything to do with you, thinking now I've got boundaries. Well, that's a reaction. Okay, now I understand the reaction. And sometimes there are some cases where that's what you actually need to do because there's too much abuse, too much toxicity or whatever to even engage, at least for a while. But that's not the end goal. When we're in a relationship and we feel controlled or manipulated or whatever, because we don't have boundaries, you have a wake-up call to some things. I don't like this. And it's sort of like that thirsty emergence with no muscle. You ever been around a toddler? Well, that's what we're talking about. They get the first emergence of their no muscle. I remember when Olivia was a little girl and she was learning to say no. I said, Olivia, no. Olivia, do this. No. Olivia, do it. I mean, it's like no to every. Olivia, breathe. No. Eat. No. It's just like blanket no, right? That's a stage because you're developing no muscle springing out. But it should be a stage. It's not a goal. And sometimes people never said any no to anything. Their first boundary will be a divorce payment. Right? Everything's in all of a sudden boom. So let's think about this for a second. That's not a boundary, that's a defense. Okay? Now, so I just said I'm saying some boundaries are about boundaries, normally speaking, within a relationship, not to get away from a relationship. We get away from a relationship when every attempt to establish boundaries within the relationship doesn't help. Ultimately, it's like an intervention. In an addict, the family has done everything it can, and the addict continues to use heroin or something. And then finally, they have to give it one more shot and then do it proactively to preserve the relationship, to preserve the marriage, to preserve whatever. And then they say, but if you can't do this, and you can only do this, then that's all we can do, and you can go your own way. But see, it comes at the end of the process. So remember, reactive boundaries are when we wake up, just in the pain, or we abandon a relationship just in the pain. We had enough. However, unnecessary boundaries. And there's a chapter called unnecessary boundaries. That's kind of this thing. Like I can't take it anymore, so I get out of it all or shut it down. Well, really, what I got to do is grow my boundaries within the relationship. So all the processes we talked about and growing in boundaries and expressing boundaries and getting strong in the relationships and mixing up these things, that's the process. So what happens a lot of times is people throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a lot of bathwater in this relationship. And there are a lot of things. What you got to do is to begin to have the confidence to go and step up. And I want to say to any of you that have been hurt on the other end of somebody claiming boundaries and then blowing you off for life and not giving you a chance to reconcile and not giving you a chance to talk and not giving you a chance to hear the grievance and not giving you a chance to work through it. That's not what boundaries are about. And if any of you are doing that, I want you to do it. That's not what boundaries are about. Because all that does is it makes you weak again for the next relationship because you haven't built the muscle inside the relationship. So I want you to learn to be strong to the relationship and have boundaries with the person, not just away from the person. Again, it's a progression. So we talk to them. We have physical boundaries. Sometimes we get away. Sometimes we need time to space from you confront, you resolve problems, you make choices, you get consequences sometimes, you use other people. There's a lot of these techniques and boundaries that are all listed in the book. We talk about it here. But you go through those progressions. It's like you listen to a country. You start with diplomacy. You don't start with war, right? You get to that stage. That's attack. So it's a progression of learning within a relationship how to resolve boundary issues to preserve love. Because if you're getting control, for lack of boundaries, there's not a lot of love there. It's getting spoiled. It's toxic. It's getting just messed up. Boundaries are secure. Boundaries are the service of love, the service of preserving relationships, also the service of turning someone's people. You can control another person. It's influence that can change. You don't influence it can change until you start to skip out. But it's to change. So active boundaries are bail out. You see this? But let's try to have boundaries in relationships. If you have a good relationship, have boundaries. And if you're not developing those in the relationship, even if they fail in that relationship, then you're not going to have a development answer. So watch for quickly ending something and maybe it's some issues. Hey guys, we're going to talk about boundaries with your spouse, which actually, in a lot of contexts, boundaries are kind of easy to talk about. This one, so let's talk about it. All right, so here's the thing. When you talk about two people coming together and marrying, the metaphor that's always been used, starts with two shall become one. Because really that's what's happening. You've integrated your life, and now you are this marital unit. Well, in that two, the two shall become one. It's multiplied. One times one is one. You got two individuals come together and they multiply. One times one is one. The one is bigger than the sum of the parts. So it's supposed to do. It's supposed to make your life bigger. It's two whole individuals come to come. The problem is so what happens is if you get one person who's premature and all together, and they marry somebody who's bringing half of a person to the party, what's one times half? So we get diminished if each person's not being fully responsible for their bringing wholeness. And if you got half a person, they join with half a person. Now you got a fourth of what you ought to have. Because it just goes down. When we bring less than maturity to a relationship. Okay, so that's humanity, and we're all less than. Right? So we come to this relationship, and what the boundary does in these they're still two individuals. And what boundaries should be is boundaries are when I'm acting less than mature, I have to depend on my wife to set a limit with my immaturity because that will contain it and hopefully bring me to a higher level and then we get back to a good place. That's normal life, okay? You step on my toe, I go, gosh, that hurt. And the other person should go, oh gosh, yes, you're right, I'm sorry. And then they watch where they walk. Okay? That's how boundaries are supposed to work. Now, here's the problem. Sometimes you'll say, you step on my toe, and they say, okay, or well, you shouldn't have put it out there. Or you think that hurt? Let me stomp harder. Or I don't care about I don't even hear you. They're not even listening. And so now you're not getting a response to you. See, in good relationships, there should be a covenant where we are here to help each other become the best and we can be so the best. We can be as best we can be. But where that breaks down is when somebody doesn't take ownership of their behavior. And that's really the deepest rootedness I think that comes in marriages is when you've got one party that's really trying and they're being loving and responsible, and the other, for whatever reason, they're narcissism or selfishness or addictive behavior, out of control, or rage, or whatever it is. They're not taking ownership of their side. So what do you do about it? Well, let's look at it. First of all, you've got to be clear about your part of the problem. And I'm not blaming victims here. Okay? Get that right. But sometimes when you are getting victimized by somebody's behavior, there is something that you're doing that you're not causing it, but you're allowing it. And so when we allow bad behavior over time, it grows. So the first thing is where am I not setting not saying that's not okay. Where's that not happening? Because you really don't know what kind of boundary problem you have until you're setting boundaries. Right? We don't know, if people run into an intersection, we don't know if they're going to run through that intersection if there's no stop sign. We only know the lawbreakers after there's a stop sign. So first thing is look at the patterns where you're getting hurt and ask yourself, have I put up the stop sign? Because you might not have done that. Number two, what kind of stop sign? See, a lot of times we perpetuate conflict because the way that we conflict is actually a valid in and of itself. So we get angry back, we get sarcastic, withdraw, or whatever it is, and then you get in this ping pong match. And it's hard to get somebody to hold their behavior when we're not responding in a way that would maximize that. Okay, so that's number two. So get back in control of how you respond. And number three is once you do that, let's look at ways we need to respond. And the sort principle here is it's basically about putting love and limits together. And I think the best way to think about boundaries with a spouse is to start with the big picture. And say, I love you. I want our marriage to work. And first of all, if I'm doing something that is causing it not to work, I want you to tell me that. And if you're doing something, I'm going to be able to tell you. And so, can we agree that it's good for us to love each other or now, most people at that policy level, if you start at that discussion, most people will say, we need to let each other. And then you ask, okay, so what's a good way for me to do that? And then they're going to say, why don't you tell me? You say, okay, I'll tell you. Now, if I tell you and it doesn't go well, then what do we do? They'll go, well, I don't know, well, listen. And then when that happens, you can say, well, this is what I said. So then you have an explanation that you can go back to. Another thing is that we're going to give each other signals, talking to a couple the other day. And they said that they get hooked, in this argument, and one of them gets triggered. I said, why don't y'all agree? And if one of you gets hurt or triggered, then you get a signal that stops those moments, this is hurting, not a good time to talk, and you take a time out until y'all can come back and figure it out when the hurt is going down and different stuff, that kind of stuff. Now, the third thing is this, that if you're setting some limits and somebody isn't perfect, it may be that you've done that so much that it's time to figure out that's not helping. And so sometimes we're giving feedback in words, and words aren't being listened to, they're being attacked. And then we kind of have to gradually move to limits and consequences. And one simple limit is a time limit or a physical distance limit. It's where you would say, you know what, I want to talk about this. One of the things that's important is I don't like to talk to people who discriminate me. So you can talk about this without calling me names or screaming at me. I'll be glad to talk about it. Until then, I'm going over to Susie's house or Mom's house or the other room or whatever. And you help them know that you want to have a conversation. You only want to have a conversation. Simple. Now, it may be that doesn't look good. All the other room. Keep screaming at you. And that's when we reach the consequences all the way to it's addictive. You might have to say, I'm trying to get you to get some treatment, I'm trying to get some help with this, and I want you to, and I want to work this out, but until you do, I want to live in a certain house. And I can't live in a house where you need to live. Okay? So we're going to accept that until you do. That's what an intervention is. So when you think about your spouse, when you're talking about a continuum here of every day moving from you stepped on my toe and somebody responding, correcting the way they walk, all the way to my toe is hurting so bad now I can't come into the house until you agree to the toe. And that's the continuum. Now this is a short little segment and you're getting a lot of material. But I want you to think about it. It starts with taking responsibility for your side of the issue. Okay? You might not be causing it, but you are responding in a way that there may be better options for how to respond. And once you start doing that, then you're looking at their response and how well they respond to your limits. And if they're not, then you're increasing those limits. And remember that boundaries aren't built in a vacuum. You're probably going to have some external support, like a good counselor, could put some boundaries through some of the boundaries communities, people's utilities out there, even a shelter in some cases. You might have to call the cops against abuse, physical abuse. These boundaries, they have to fit kind of the appropriate violations, right? Danger, and all of that stuff. The principle is that you're making sure that you're not doing it in a vacuum where you have the help that you need. And make sure that help is someone that's helping you in the service of the bigger goal, which is to help marriage. A lot of people will go run to somebody else and talk them into, you just need to get rid of this person. That's not in service of marriage. That just keeps you from learning how to have boundaries with a person. So that's kind of the thing. And your problem's going to fall somewhere, on that line. So pick the right level of intervention.
It's nice to see you again. Entitlement is a demand for special treatment. Instead of being grateful for ordinary, good enough resources and situations, an entitled person demands the best. Here are a few examples of entitlement. Feeling that I deserve a better lot in life than I received, a sense that people need to make restitution for their sins against me, a need for others to apologize for hurting me before I will get better, an inability to feel loved when I am not front and center stage, a sense of deprivation when I am not made special to others, feeling that people don't treat me with the respect I deserve. Obviously, entitlement destroys safety, because no normal human can fulfill our demands. It's impossible to love an entitled person, as some fault, empathic misstep, or insensitivity will send the entire relationship tumbling down. The entitled person must be listened to and understood perfectly at all times, or they feel injured and wounded. The end result is isolation. The antidote to entitlement is forgiveness in two directions. An entitled person needs to ask forgiveness for their own imperfections, and learn to forgive others for not meeting their outrageous expectations.
Hey guys, let's talk about a word today. It's entitled. So, if we all hear tossed about being an entitled person, it actually is a source of a lot of issues in relationships, families, just and so helping us because of your titles. Something's gone wrong, right? There is injustice. There is something that you've done bad to that person by violating their rights. So you're entitled to something. And I give the store manager $1, and I am entitled to my fine. If I'm an entitled person, I feel like I'm entitled to that without getting a dollar, right? Or vice versa. Store, they're entitled to the market. They can act like, give me your dollar. So if the purest face of what entitlement is, it means it's like a house where you rent the time here is we also have needs and what we agree is it's sometimes frustrating though. This is what this is what's happening. And he taught me how to intentionally put boundaries. Now, I am going to write a book about how my business boundaries jealousy. But I learned these things actually in Entitl training with certain things. It's not chasing the dream. And so that's apparently number one, you put them on the edge. And I said, well, let me tell you what Gary Taylor talked about in Entitl. Let's play Entitl together. When they're learning something like something like a kid when they're and they learn to walk and they learn to fly and they're supposed to fly but he's now working at the top and he was frustrated and then you start building responsibility. So sit down one more time with him and say, listen, I love you and I'm proud of you. And congrats, you're making more money. This and that. But sometimes I want to grow and keep and so I've been tempted parts of my kids or get a plan with this year and since he's in university, make breakfast together for him. And if they're happy, it might be see, it says that you instruct them by the result. And the change and that's what they should start to get. Obviously, as they get older, this is they're going to try and and it's set up so that on one side is this is not fair, it's not kosher. We need to change this arrangement to renegotiate these things. So he gave me 2 years ago. I said, you know, you recommend these dishes for this. And we set it up like this, and he's writing things in the book. He's got those things as his and you have good questions, you always ask those questions. How you end up with this. Now, here's a big one. I've got one current scenario. Wife, mother, 4 kids, and I said, you know, people are saying what you're doing. I said, again, you got one, you got one. And they don't respond to that. They don't respond to that with gratitude. It's what people say. The other thing is, they'll tell me, it's like the boyfriend on one, they'll start to attack you for saying you're not giving them something that you're creating. And they'll start to attack. And so I have to make sure is if we have 50%, we have to make sure I'm working on this side. Placating, placating is what you got to do is stay firm on your beliefs. You live by your beliefs. You have to make sure that you're saying, okay, now this is frustrating. Understand? If I can be short with something, just be honest. So think figure out some other options. You want to grow your business. And then grow Entitl. Keep intentions there. And your time negotiation is going to just change. Like my ex is like, it's been a long story, so I didn't give you. He said, didn't I give you one of your? It's been longer than that. I said, well, let me check this out. Can I do
Someone who has emotionally abused you has left you feeling lost, confused, and hurt by the way they treated you. You've struggled to get in touch with reality. You don't feel good about yourself, and you're not sure how to get out of your situation or what to do next. It's a toxic cycle to be in, but throughout this course, I'm going to talk to you about how to move away from those emotionally abusive situations and get into an environment of healing. I'd like to encourage you to be in the business of increasing your equity, and by that, I mean increasing your assets over your liabilities and building up your balance sheet of life. Here's how you can put yourself into a position of strength. Develop a strong support system of friends who will stand with you when you have to do something difficult, or when you might lose someone's approval or even relationship. Get strongly grounded spiritually so that when difficulties occur, you have a foundation to depend on. Get the coaching or counseling that you need to deal with whatever or whomever you are dealing with in the bigger picture. A mentor is good, and sometimes a professional is better, as it is more directly focused in structure. Remember, we are talking about a balance sheet here, not a short-term loan. These are real assets, and like all assets, the more valuable ones take time to build. These are not quick fixes. Put the time and effort in these and see them as goals that are going to take months, sometimes years, to get where you ultimately want them. I realize that it's easier said than done, but we're going to get into that more in this course. We've just touched the tip of the iceberg here, so let's dive in further to chip away at this topic and get to a place where we are feeling more confident.
Experience of, I can't do it. I want to push against that because you can. And let's just talk about some of the ways, and that question's answered. Of can you stop it? And when does it get to be too much? And like, do I need to stop? And how do I do this? So let's talk a little bit about why you can stop this thing. Number one, very important. Internally, you've got to tune in. See, a lot of times being emotionally abused, there's so much kind of like subjective, just this feeling of badness that we're not really tuning in to what's actually going on inside, how we actually feel, and putting those labels to it. I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling controlled. I'm feeling put down and shamed. I'm feeling parented and judged. I'm not hanging out with my friends. You've got to tune in. One of my favorite verses, you've heard me say this before, it comes out of the book of Hebrews. It says that solid food, meaning adult life and real relationships and all that, solid food is for the mature who, through practice, have had their senses trained to discern good from evil, right? If you have been abused, I guarantee you, in part, you have been talked out of your senses. Well, that doesn't hurt. I wasn't doing that to you. What are you talking about? I'm not controlling you. Well, if you'd have done this, and you're having this feeling, but you're getting talked out of what you feel. All right, if I'm stepping on my toe here, I have pain senses, that give me a signal that hurt. It's very specific. So I want you to begin to tune in and take that list I gave you internally and begin to ask yourself objectively, which of these am I feeling? Okay. And so then you're starting to turn in. So what you're doing is, by definition, watch this. When I begin to ask, what am I feeling? What I've done is I've created the first boundary, and that's a boundary between me and the abuser. Okay. I've started to differentiate and say, wait a minute, I'm feeling this. And then I ask the question, why am I feeling this? And that helps me to name the behavior of the other person that's causing me to feel this. So that's the first thing, is internally getting back to awareness of what you're actually feeling and what's making you feel that way. Now, closely related to that is the other thing I said. Some of the abuse may be coming from your own head. So you got to tune into, did they say it as a 3 and I heard it as an 8? And we got to internally tune into, do I have critical voices, or the opposite? Do I have excusing voices? See, sometimes you're kind of enabling this. It's not your fault. It just happens in the wiring. It's a result of this. But you're making excuses for that. Oh, he's just tired, or that's just her personality, or she's just, she had a hard childhood, or kind of whatever it is. That's fine for understanding something, but it can't be okay for excusing and enabling something. So tune in to what's going inside about your own voices, what you're telling yourself about this, that may be adding to it, or it may be diminishing the reality. Both of those are true, or can be true. Both of those exist. You've got to get an accurate read on this, and that means getting some awareness of what's going on in your head. Now, the third thing, you know what? The abuser doesn't need a partner to help abuse. Okay? It shouldn't be 2 against 1. So what that means is you've got to look at this internal stuff and how am I enabling this? See, now you're really on their side against you. And so you've got to look at ways in which you've been sucked into this, and you're excusing it and this, that, and the other. And what are my enabling behaviors that are allowing this to continue? Okay, so we don't want to be a partner in this. If this is really happening, you're a true victim, not a partner. And so you got to differentiate and say, here's the ways that I see I'm allowing this or enabling this, and I'm going to list them. All right. Now, once you list them, probably if you could do anything about it on your own, you would have. So the next thing is you're going to build some alliances. You're going to join a boundaries forum. Okay? You're going to join a boundaries group. You're going to join a codependency group. You're going to get a therapist. You're going to, some sort of a support group. But you have got to be joined. Here's the abuser. Here's you. You've got to have external relationships for new energy and new intelligence. So they're going to pump support and healing into you, and they're also going to help you get some wisdom on understanding the patterns and also giving you some tools to fight it. So don't try to do this alone. Coming out of emotional abuse is not a self-program. We need alliances to do this, and that's why there's 10,000 million groups out there that support, ways to help you do this. So the next step after these alliances, you got to get healed in terms of what's going on. It's hard to fight a battle when we're limping from the last shot that was fired. So you got to get strong, and you got to get some healing. And I've seen countless relationships where it wasn't until somebody was getting some healing and felt strong enough to actually be able to stand up and do something about this. So the alliance and the healing that comes from the alliances, as well as the support and learning, is really, really important on this. Okay, the alliances are going to strengthen you. They're going to help you see clearly, and they're going to heal you. Now, closely related to that healing is you're probably going to have some work to do. I doubt this is. It happens, some percentage, significant percentage, but the bigger percentage is we tend to kind of like fall into patterns with subsequent relationships. And so this may have happened in your life in a primary relationship, like your family of origin or other significant relationships that have kind of gotten you into these patterns. And that needs to be healed as well. It's difficult to deal. Go back to the guy that saw his wife as critical. He really had some other things. He healed with that before he could ever deal with what she was doing or not doing. So trust healing is a key part of this. You're not going to send a football player out on the field in the second half if they've broken their ankle in the first half. You're going to give them some time to heal before you put them back in the game. All right. So the healing you need, related to that but different, is you need a emotional abuse free zone, a no-fly zone. So where do you go that's your safe haven? Where do you go that's a time and a place and a space that you go, I know when I'm there, I'm going to be okay. Sometimes that's structured in that you need it regularly, but sometimes it needs to be on call. So you got to have a place where you can go, in the worst moments, somebody you can call. Now, after you do all of that, and I've said a lot here in this second part, it's going to take some unloading, right, and work. This internal part, the not partnering in it, the not enabling it, the figuring out the alliances, the healing, the support, having a place, all of that. I want you to list those things and begin to, as you're going through this, and remember, I said the internal work, that in part means listing the behaviors that the person is doing because you can't fight something that you can't see and you haven't named what the enemy is. And the enemy is actually the behaviors the person is doing. So we can't stop enabling until we list them. This is where, like, reading books on, you know, what this kind of narcissist looks like. We have courses in this course. What does narcissism look like? How can I recognize it? What does control look like? Get your awareness going. When you do all those things, then it's time to move to what we'll talk about in a moment, and that's some specific tools. Okay, so you're going into a fight. I don't want to call it a fight or a battle, but actually it is. You got to fight back. Emotional abuse doesn't mean abuse back. It means you got tools. When a police officer goes into a dangerous situation, hopefully they're not trying to turn into an offensive perpetrator, but they do have tools. They have skills of being able to defend themselves, try to diffuse a situation, and get to some kind of good outcome. So we need a toolbox. So let's look at a few of those. The first defense you have is your words. Okay? A lot of times, people are unaware they're doing this. And a lot of times, nobody's ever stood up to them. Nobody's ever said, don't do that. That didn't feel good. That's not okay. Here's what's interesting. Passive people that are, kind of codependent and enablers, they many times don't speak up because they're principally afraid of being abandoned, and they're the ones that get abandoned in the end. Ultimately, if somebody has control of a relationship, they tend to devalue that person and move on or have other relationships or whatever. So the first thing is to begin to form your words and be able to make the I statements, name it. You know what? I want to talk to you about this. Try to do it when it's not happening and say, I want to be close to you. I want to have a good relationship. There's certain things you may not be aware of them, but when you do them, it hurts. And I start to feel alone. I start to feel controlled. I start to feel bad. Just go down the list and begin to speak back or speak up. Now, how you do that is very, very important. Don't turn into the blamer, blaming them in terms of you're so abusive or you're so this. Be specific with your words. When you do this, here's how I feel and here's what it does to me. And more important than that, here's how it affects our relationship. I'd like for us to not have that happen. What are some ways that we can make sure that doesn't happen? So you learn good old-fashioned assertiveness training. Okay, you learn to assert yourself. That's not aggressive. It's assertive. It's where you say, when this is happening, I don't like it. It hurts me. I'm going to talk about how to do better. Can you stop it? Okay. So that's the first minor kind of immune system fight back to this. Secondly, the words have got to be kind of become almost second nature to you. And you got to have conversations. And this is where I tell people, script these words and go practice with somebody. Have a role play. Have them come back at you. Your friend, have them come back at you and say, well, that's your fault. You know what? I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about what you're doing. Or I understand you feel that way, but let me say it again. And you learn and you practice in building the skills by having actually scripted conversations that are going to become second nature to you. Okay? Because if you're trying to think in the moment and you hadn't practiced it, that can be really, really difficult. The third thing is physical boundaries, physical space. One of the most helpful techniques to a screamer sometimes, aggressive, like, rageaholic, they'd say, look, I don't think well when you're screaming at me. It's hard to talk to you for me when I'm being screamed at. So just want to let you know, if you start to do that again, I'm just going to check out. I'm going to take a timeout. Or I'm going to call a timeout. I'm going to go into the other room, or I'm going to take a walk, or I'm going to go down to my friend's house, or whatever, or all the way to, I might have to go to a shelter or somewhere else. And that physical space, sometimes that's very, very important to contain it, protect you, contain the other person's behavior, and also create some safety. Now, along that same line, sometimes we don't need physical space, but we do need emotional space. Now, that doesn't mean you're not engaging with a person, but you are protecting your heart. You're not being as vulnerable, and you're not trusting, because trust comes from proven behavior. And if somebody's proven that they can't behave in a certain way when you share something vulnerable or a feeling, or you're sad, and they say, well, "What's wrong with you? You're a wuss," or that, don't be vulnerable. As Jesus said, don't cast your pearls before swine, or give it to the dogs. They'll trample you and bite you. So sometimes there's certain things, aspects, feelings, dreams, whatever they are, it's not safe yet to be vulnerable in that way. You can have a shallower relationship until you can go deeper. So protect yourself from having it happen more and more. I've seen people say, I just talked to a friend the other day who said, a family member, like, just shut him off. And they said, and they said, you know what? Until we can really talk, it's going to be a shallow relationship. I can't have meaningful conversations if you won't engage with me. And sometimes we have to go shallow for a while to protect your heart. And it's going to be a really important aspect of this. The next one is, one of the strongest boundaries that you have is other people that are safe. That's your codependency group, your safe friends. Who can you call? And sometimes what you need to do is have a safe people belong to saying, like, you got to have this interaction. You call your safe person from your boundaries forum, or whoever this is. I got to go talk to them. I practice my script. I go do that, and then I come back. And they talk you out of the getting confused or whatever it was, and they kind of pump life back into you. Other times, this support system becomes, as we said earlier, the place where you get supported, where this doesn't happen. So you've got to have some other people in this. And I would like to see that structured, like a therapist you go to regularly if you're being emotionally abused, a group you go to, and some friends that are kind of on call, and kind of like the normal, have lunch a couple times a week. But whatever the dosage and formula is, other people are key to this. A Navy SEAL doesn't go into a battle alone. They have a buddy. They're always in a group. And they're much more able to come out of there alive when they have their group that empowers them, helps them, and strengthens them. Okay, so the other people, the therapists and all these people, really, really important. Another step that's really important in this is to make sure that you're constantly getting reintegrated and re-inundated with the truth, because there's going to be ongoing mind control, and you've got to get, people's minds get bent by emotionally abusive people. Have some pattern or some person or some practice where you can continually be reminded, wait a minute, this is wrong. I'm not crazy. They're really doing this. And keep that truth ongoing basis, really, really, really beginning to deprogram you from being in this cult that you're locked in this dyad where it's really, really getting to you. The other thing, the next tool, is look at your active versus passive ratio. The more you're passive in taking this and not being active and keeping choices in front of you, you always have choices. You can leave the room, you can leave the house, you can call a friend, you can go read a book, you can speak up, you can challenge them to go to therapy with you. There's always choices, all the way down to you can hide your phone under your knee and call 911. You always have choices. Emotionally abused people, their range of choices gets very, very limited. And you've got to make sure that you've got a good toolbox of those. And then lastly, consequences. Figure out what the consequences are. A lot of times, emotionally abusive person, you're looking at a toddler in a 40-year-old body. What do you do with a toddler when they're, having a temper tantrum, you put them in timeout, or you say, I'm not going to play with you until, you speak to me nicely. Or if you do that again, I'm going to leave. Or if you do that again, if you don't get sober or whatever it is, I'm going to have to live somewhere else until you go into treatment. Whatever it is, a lot of times people that are out of control, until they feel like that's costing them in some way, then they're not going to change. But consequences are there to protect you, but they also can influence somebody else. I've seen abusive people not go into treatment until somebody said, you know, I can't be in the house with you until you agree to go to therapy. Or other consequences, like I'm not going to talk to you about that unless we're with the therapist. So figure out, I'm not talking about punishing people. I'm talking about giving them logical, natural consequences that are based on their behavior. If you do A, then B is going to happen. That can sometimes help structure and contain somebody. So there's a bunch of things that you can do to protect yourself. But as we said, it starts with educating yourself externally about what abuse is and internally about how it's affecting you. And then, secondly, beginning to get this list of things that you can do that you have to do, internal alliances, don't partner with them, don't enable it. Get that together. And then, thirdly, put that into actionable tool steps. And that's going to lead to a lot of healing. And remember this, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that God is always there to help you. And I believe that He created you not to be abused, but to be in relationships that cause you to thrive. And remember, He's always on your side. Ask for help.